Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Dojo Live. Today is June the 30th, and of course, I got my fellow teammate Kim Lantis joining me today against her will, right, Kim?
A little bit,
As
a little
co-host, a little bit, yeah, no, but yeah, you do great. You'll do great. So joining us, and also, and of course, for the first time, we got Bea here, Beatriz Grajales, our very own audience development manager, broadcasting live from the beautiful city of Merida, Yucatan in Mexico. Welcome, Bea. This is your first time,
Yeah,
okay?
it's my first time here in Dot
Yeah,
Live.
yeah. So you'll do
bit.
great, Bea.
In front of the camera, anyway.
In front of a camera
In
because you're
front of
always
the
behind
camera,
us.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, then there's the reason why we do this, which is our guests. And today, I'm very happy to introduce Prakash Hosalli, the co-founder and CEO of Akila Labs. So, Prakash, welcome to today's edition of Dojo Live, and welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Okay.
Thank you, Carlos, for having me in Dojo Live. And the good thing is that we are all remote so that we don't have to wrestle each other. So I'm very glad that, uh, so I'm so happy to be in this dojo. Thanks
Perfect.
for having me.
It's our pleasure, Prakash. Okay. So, well, Prakash, I'd like to ask you something first before we continue with the topic. So, tell us and the audience a little bit about you. Let's start with that. Who is Prakash Hosalli, please? Let's start with that.
Who is Prakash Hosalli? It's a question for the ages, but I think it's a very simple answer. I am a very uncomplicated, at least in my mind, person who has been on some crazy journey, starting off, in India, where my first career was in the Indian Army as a paratrooper. From there, I moved because I married really well uh, you know into the information technology field, and I've been an immigrant to Americas for the last 21 years, and I am a perfect. In fact, we are a perfect example of what America means to a lot of people around the world. And as part of this continuation of the crazy pursuit, I am also the co-founder of Akila Labs. Full disclosure, this company was founded by my wife, as I mentioned, who is I'm married really, up as far as I'm concerned. She
Mm.
has got she's a computer science research, uh, and she has worked in software, and it is her brainchild. And I am what I consider to be a glorified janitor for my company. That I basically do everything else, and she's the brains.
So,
Uh,
so she's so far out of your league that you literally had to jump out of an airplane to get her attention.
it was. In fact, we met by coincidence in a botanical garden back in India, and I was, to be honest, a little drunk when I met her. It was day drinking, so and that's how I met her. And she was very impressed with me because she met me only for a few hours, and the rest of the courtship happened across 1,000 miles when we were writing handwritten letters. People were talking about the 90s when there was no Instagram or
Yeah.
social media. So handwritten letters, which was delivered to me on mules at an altitude of 15,500 feet. So trust me, we have some really old style courtship. And from
I love
there,
it.
we got married. We moved to this country in 2000. So as far as my American brain is concerned, I've just become eligible to start drinking. So I'm 21 years old as far as the American side of my brain is concerned. So again, that's my story. And we've got two boys. Uh, Expected really suck at sport, very good at math. So works out perfectly for us. So
Awesome.
that's our
That's
story.
interesting story, Prakash. Whatever you look at it. So, tell us about Aquila Labs. What is your value proposition? What problem do you solve? Tell us a little bit about that, please.
I mean, Aquila Lab started off as it's almost like it was a dare that we presented to ourselves as somebody from technology background. We had that chutzpah that a lot of people from technology background is that okay, this is a big problem in healthcare. Why can't we solve it? And as we were trying to solve this problem, so our first focus was on preventive health. Is that okay? This should not be that difficult. Why is it so difficult for people to stay healthy? Because we knew that what is the cost of lifestyle has on the healthcare system. It is just not a problem in US or Western countries. This is a problem in India and China. Chronic diseases caused by lifestyle eats up the biggest chunk of healthcare dollars or rupees or rubles anywhere in the world. So we started off as this challenge is that can we use technology, especially AI, to understand all the data that is available to us through smartphones, smart watches, and figure out a way to map people's behavior and use that to tweak that gently over a period of time so that they can become healthy. So our proposition and the problem that we were trying to solve is that can we do that? As we did that, spent a few years doing pilots at 2 hospitals in New York, we realized is that we were up against a lot of competition, and there was a lot of legacy in terms of trying to make people healthy. Sorry, go ahead. I think you wanted to ask me something. Carlos?
No, not at all. I think
No.
Sorry.
We'll just finish up the history of Akila and then move on to today's topic.
Yeah,
but please continue.
Yeah. So as we did that, so the first foray of our company was in preventive health, especially diabetes prevention. From there, what we realized is that we have to become even more clinical, that our technology that we have built has got applications beyond diabetes prevention, that it can become the foundational technology for managing chronic diseases, that it can be used to train athletes. It can be part of government programs. With my background in the Army, I think it can be used to keep our armed forces in good shape, especially because it is very holistic way of looking at health. So I know it is a long-winded answer, but the problem is really huge. And we wanted to make sure that, I describe what has been our evolution. So in its current form, we are providing, using our technology as a health as a service offering so that it can be used by any business to integrate with their offering. So if you're, say, a telemedicine company, you can integrate our technology so that you can manage the engagement with your patients when the consultation ends. What happens between the clinical visits is what we take over, that we manage the relationship, we manage the engagement, we keep them healthy, we understand the analytics, and then we give the same insights and analytics back to the provider so that when the next encounter happens, that you are not starting from scratch again, that you're not going back to medical records to figure out. So we provide the continuity of care between 2 visits with your clinician. Same analogy can be applied to coaching. If you are a high school athlete, what happens to you between the time somebody coaches you? Are you sleeping well? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you recovering well? So all those things. So ours is kind of a foundational technology that can be used to essentially improve the health and wellness and disease management of your customers' patients.
Perfect. Awesome. So, Kim, I'm sorry, Kim, did I interrupt?
No, which brings us to today's topic.
Of course. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. So, Kim, please go ahead.
Thank you, Carlos and Prakash. Thank you for being here. I have to say, your introduction was one of the funnest introductions I think we've had so far. I don't know if I've laughed that much in a while. And Carlos, I do want to be here. It's a bit against my will because, disclaimer here, folks, my experience, I apologize. PTO today, had to jump in because Tulio had a little bit of something that made him unable to make it. I've been cleaning my house all day because I'm on my way on a road trip, so forgive me.
You're forgiven, Kim. No explanation needed. I'm sure.
Well, there is an explanation needed.
No explanation needed, Kim.
Thank you so much. But behavioral AI, that is the topic of today. Behavioral AI. How can AI address the growing and unsustainable costs of healthcare, especially managing lifestyle-driven chronic diseases? Now, Prakash, my first question for you, given what you've already explained a little bit about Akila, would be, when I first read behavioral AI, my interpretation was it was the artificial intelligence that was doing the behaving. But I'm getting the sense that your artificial intelligence is in fact tracking behavior. Which of those two is it?
Yes, it is. It is both tracking and if when it gets to a stage where it can understand the correlation between the variables that affect somebody's behavior, that it can actually also modify it using cognitive behavior principles. So when we say behavioral AI, those two words have is a more tighter bond that they affect each other. So the behavior affects the AI affects the behavior. That's one reason we honed on to this kind of catchword for us. It's not a gimmick. We are not trying to trademark it or anything like that. It is just a way to explain what do we mean by behavior. Because ultimately, if you really want to make people healthy, you have to understand their behavior. And by the way, behavioral AI is used by a lot of companies. Behavioral AI is the basis for all the kind of ad driven media landscape that we've been used to for the last 70, 80 years, right? Essentially, but that is mass behavior modification, right? You are using now companies like Facebook and Twitter and all these companies use targeted ad. What is that? It is essentially understanding, mapping your behavior or your your model of who you are and targeting the ad for you. So it is personalization of the ad. It is used by shopping, right? When somebody gives you a recommendation when you buy a book. So this concept is not new, but I think it is absolutely new in terms of using it for health, because when it comes to health, I think we suddenly become very coy in trying to deploy these kind of technologies to actually help people. We have no problems as a society, as companies, to use that to make people fight with each other on social media, increase the engagement by, because ultimately those algorithms have figured out that behavior, and that
Exactly.
behavior is that if you post pictures of your cats, yet you will get engagement. But trust me, you will get more engagement if you can somehow figure out how to get cat hating people to come and visit your post. The engagement certainly, and by the way, this is just an example, but companies have understood it. They are exploiting it. Now, what our hypothesis and our claim is that we can do the same to actually help people, right? If we
Okay.
understand the behavior and the data, or the R engine does, it can become an unbiased uh, uh, entity that can help you become better, and it uses your own data. We're not
Exactly.
supported by ad models, nothing like that. There's no external force acting on that relationship between our engine and the
Because
user.
because one of the key words here in your subject line here is lifestyle driven chronic disease, right? If it's my lifestyle, then
You,
in effect it's my behaviors that
you stole my
are
question, Kim. You
impacting
stole
this
my
disease.
question.
Oh,
I'll never forgive you for that. You stole my question.
So by
Dang.
the way, this was all an act. She was all ready. This was all an act. She was just there to come and make sure that she can overshadow you.
Ah,
yeah,
yeah,
right. If
absolutely.
I
She always
zoom
does.
in close, you'll see my unbrushed teeth. So
I don't mind. She brings this fun energy to the show all the time. So I think I'd like to add to what Kim just mentioned. I'm just wondering what if you can give us like some examples what lifestyle driven chronic disease would be. That would be of great help. And this is because, well, some of us have been recently maybe exposed, or I don't know how to put that, but maybe close to some illnesses that have to do with specific lifestyles, right? So, and or poor lifestyle choices. Okay, so would you mind giving us an example of what you consider to be a lifestyle-driven chronic disease, for example, and then we can elaborate from there?
So essentially, lifestyle-driven chronic disease are essentially diseases that have come about as our lifespans have increased. So, for example, 200 years back, people didn't have diabetes because they would die off, when they were in their 40s, right?
Mm.
So essentially, lifestyle diseases are, an outcome of a good thing that our lifespans have increased. But our lifestyle has increased, our access to food has increased, and we have become sedentary in our lifestyle, right? This is a perfect example of the fact that we cannot, brush our teeth and be here talking to each other, right? So,
Mm-hmm. See, Kim? See?
But again, so the point is that the best example of a lifestyle driven chronic disease, which actually also can be driven genetically, is diabetes. So, for example, type 1 diabetes is related to it's you're born with that defect, not defect, born with that condition.
Mhm.
But type 2 diabetes is generally a combination of genetics and your lifestyle. Essentially, is that it's poor diet, poor nutrition, uh, uh, lack of exercise, lack of high stress environment, lack
Mhm.
of sleep, even things like what kind of environment you are in, all right, pollution, the kind of gut bacteria you have, all those things kind of act on you over a long period of time that uh, you know turns aids in becoming diabetic. There is also a correlation with the amount of sunlight you can process and the vitamin D you get. So there are a lot of factors, but it is all just related to the fact that we are alive, and that causes wear and tear. And diabetes is a perfect example. You also have this hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and those used to be treated as kind of separate this thing, but now there is an agreement that all these things are interrelated, that diabetes can drive cardiovascular disease, that hypertension can affect how you are able to deal with diabetes, or that it also affects your aging related diseases like Alzheimer and dementia. It can also affect inflammation driven diseases, and cancer is a perfect example of that. So all these things are kind of lifestyle disease, but we consider diabetes as I don't know if you know of the concept of a mother sauce in French cooking. We consider diabetes as the bechamel sauce. On top of
Uh-huh,
it, you
uh-huh.
can add something else, and it becomes another disease. So that is our analogy as far as lifestyle disease. Diabetes is the
Mhm.
biggest of all.
Of
Like
course.
in US alone, somebody who becomes diabetic costs about $17,000 a year to the healthcare system per person. So that's kind of the
Right.
impact of these.
Talk about unsustainability. Well, so how
Yeah.
to, right?
Prakash, I have one question. I want to know your perspective about medicine and technology. How we can use that technology, specific the artificial intelligence in the preventive medicine, and how does Aquila help wellness in a company or in a person?
So when I hear the term medicine, do you mean pharma medicine or just medicine, right? I mean, I just want to be clear, is that because I've got answer for both. Uh,
Hmm.
so so in terms of how it can help individuals and companies, right? There is a vested interest as an individual, obviously, right? I mean, it's my personal exam, and I was lucky, by the way, because I got to join the army. The Indian government spent a lot of money on training me, so I was lucky to get exposure to becoming healthy very early in my life. So I was able to carry that forward. But a lot of people, including my own family, generationally have not been exposed to this idea of physical fitness, and even food. The relationship that we have with food is driven by our experience as a species with famine and feasting, right? So we have been exposure to that. So there is the relationship with food that we have is also driven by the way we think, because of our history, right? So all these things kind of gives you a disadvantage straight up front, right? And then on top of that, add is certain groups of people who have this genetic predisposition to becoming diabetic. So you could have as a three-part freight truck that hits you, and most of the time people don't do it because they are lazy, or it is not at all like that. And by the way, behavior, even bad behavior, uh, people feel good about indulging in that. It's a weird way of, because we are creatures of habit. So it's a tough problem to solve at an individual level. At a company level or a society level, it is absolutely in our interest, because it takes away resources, and the resources that you are spending, say, taking care of people for their health, could be deployed to improve the infrastructure. It could be deployed to discover new technologies that can help us to fight climate change. We are not able to do that because, for example, in US, almost 1/5 of the economy is GDP is pushed towards healthcare, which is generally a non-productive part of the GDP. So I know I have gone into this spiel. So my point is that so the way we have thought about this problem is to take ownership of the personalization of dealing with the individual, right? So when we do that, we take over that responsibility so that it becomes easy for an individual to not have to make these complex decisions on a daily basis. I can give you an example of how, looking at my own data, that it is so complicated. I've got about 2 GB of data from my Apple Watch. Try analyzing this data on your own, right? So it is very difficult for an individual to try, ask a provider or a health coach to do it. A person cannot do that. So we absolutely have to deploy technology like AI. And AI works best when you're trying to personalize it. Because yes, it can give you insights about the masses, but and then for a company that or a entity that wants to deploy this technology, it is in their interest because they get a lot of insights so that they can take their patient population or their employee population and actually segment it so that they can deploy resources in over and above what they are using for Akila, so that they can now say, okay, the 20% of the population, they have some other problems that Akila cannot solve. We will give that insight in a few weeks instead of waiting for 6 months. And then we can say that, look, we can handle 60% of your population, but the other 40%, you devise some programs which requires maybe a little more in-person touch, that they require is a little more, maybe they have some issues around their mental health, that they have problems, say, with sleep, or they have anxiety about, their financial situation. There is no way our technology. So that is basically how we can help companies as well as individuals.
Prakash, I have one
Yeah.
more question, and then I'm going to pass it on to Kim and Bea for wrap up because we're approaching the final segment of today's conversation. I can perceive the possibility that you might be acquiring like tons of data just by having a lot of people, all of your user base, establishing their health baseline and goals, right? So there's like a ton of data that is being generated and processed and acted upon. So in that context, would you, looking at a little bit ahead into the future, how do you envision Aquila's contribution to maybe maybe government-sponsored programs, health programs, or health authorities to actually alleviate the impact of the habits that are conducive to a health problem like diabetes?
And by the way, that's a really good question, and that also is our kind of moat that we are building to protect our business. Is that behavior data that we are building? It's not just data, raw data that we collect from the users. It is the interaction with that raw data, right? What happens? So it is a lot of metadata which is there in that behavior data, and that is also one of the services that we would provide to our business partners, is to provide insights with that data. It's not just that it is data, that we can provide you with insight so that you can deploy your resources more effectively. That you are not, say, if you have as $100 to spend across, say, 100 people, we will tell you is deploy maybe give us $10, we'll take care of 60% of your population. Now you have is $90 or $80 that you can tactically or more strategically deploy for those groups of people. So you're absolutely right. This can become a great place for us to do research on, how can our data be used to do prediction for, say, aging related disease? Can it be done to predict who is likely to be hospitalized to control costs, or somebody who might have issues with their mental health? We are also, if users allow, we also take in their financial data, so we can create we can use that to also predict is that if there is a problem with the financial, based on the time of the month, that what happens to your health, that we can predict that, and we can use that
Right.
to help this. So there are a lot of possibilities, not only for government, but other companies also that are
Absolutely.
interested in
Yeah.
our data.
Even I think I see a prediction of where do we need to increase specialists in whatever disease. It's going to happen, and the growing population is going to be here. This is where you need to build your hospital. This is where you need to start investing in cardiologists or whatever it might be. I can see that application as well. As I listen to you, Prakash, I can't help but remember a Dojo Live we had a couple weeks, months, geez, time flies, ago with, I don't know, perhaps you've heard of her, Sherry, I think her last name is pronounced Yang or Shang. She's the CEO of a company called Genopalette. And what they're able
Oh
to
yeah,
do,
yeah, 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 yeah.
you send in, I think, like a saliva swab or whatever, and they can use technology to deeply analyze your genome and help you with your personalized nutrition. And so what I'm hearing here is this trend toward personalization. We now have had, centuries of medicine, which is awesome, but we're getting to that point where we don't need to generalize anymore, where we can focus on individualizing things. So I just think you should talk to her and see what you guys can do with the individualized, very personal genetic analysis combined with your behavioral analysis. And
Oh yeah, I
we're
can
going to make
envision.
super soldiers.
I'll do an intro, and you guys can take it from there.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you look at our data model, genetic information is one of the variables. So it is not that. So we are interested in your genetic information as well as your credit card habits. Again, not to use that to sell you crap. That's the whole point, is that we don't want to be exploitative. That it is, you give us the data, you pay us a subscription fee, and you are our users. You are not the product. So we are very, very clear on that. That's one reason we'll not have ad-driven or any kind of supported. It will be a transactional, so that it is very clear is that we owe our loyalty to the patients, and that's pretty much what it is.
Prakash, we're coming up on time, unfortunately, but all good things come to an end eventually. But before we do that, for those who might be watching out there, do you have any final words of wisdom? And it could be anything regarding your journey building your company. Anything you want to share before we go?
Yeah, I want to share. So one thing, I know a lot of people during pandemic became professional, bread makers and this thing. And I have been working on this accent. So I just want to be very clear that this accent is all fake. I have been working on this through my pandemic. Now, that was a little joke. I'm a failed comedian also. So that's the reason I want to keep on cracking
jokes.
these
We don't know what a joke here is on Dojo
Yeah,
Live.
I know it is. So I have
Never,
no sense
ever.
of humor. Exactly.
God forbid.
So anyhow, I know if there is a message of one thing I really believe, that you should really invest in your health. I think even before anything else, right? It is like I'm borrowing somebody else's this thing. It is like putting the oxygen mask on yourself before you even put it on your child in an airplane, right? That should be your focus. Is that, and I think if we do that, everything else will come out of it. So for me, personal message, if I want to give, is that focus on your health. All your goals for the week should be about whatever is your physical activity or exercise goals. That is more important. Money, all the hustle that you do is completely unimportant. First is that. Second is, habits. Obviously, work is important, that you are focusing on that. And the third is that you reinforce all this with social interaction, which is your family. What I meant to say is that, as far as I'm concerned, my personal health is the first thing I care about. The last thing I care about is my kids. So that was my message.
Awesome. That was excellent. So, Bea, there you have it. There's a whole bunch of quotes in there for you to use, right, for the next coming weeks.
So much content. Thank you, Prakash.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole bunch of quotes that you're going to be taking advantage of. All right.
And I'll get canceled on Twitter. So there you go.
Oh, no, we won't. We're all about good stuff here, good vibrations. So, Prakash, it's been a pleasure to have you here on Dojo Live today. And I'm just going to ask you to stick around before we wrap before we go off the air. I just have a quick announcement about this week's last show, which is tomorrow, right here on Dojo Live, and that is we're going to be speaking with Maju Kuruvilla, the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Bolt and bolt.com. And the topic is going to be the future of shopping identity power commerce. I look forward to that one. Should be as interesting as ever. We're going to be answering the question, can identity power commerce help retailers survive the cookie apocalypse? So look, let's stay tuned for that one, folks, right here on Dojo Live. And Bea, thank you again. Kim, thank you again. One more time. Thank you for showing up without brushing your teeth. We're okay with that. And of course, our guest, Prakash. It was a pleasure to have you here. And let's stay tuned. Let's stay connected and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.